Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard, and I'm really excited about today's show. So, as you know, on this channel, we talk about the issues that men and boys face in today's modern society, and today we're going to address one that you guys talk to me about a lot. I would put it right up there in the top three of things that I hear from guys that they're struggling with, and something that they don't know how to handle. And guess what? I'm not an expert either, so I don't know either. But I've got you covered on that. So we're going to be tackling the subject, which is really how men struggle with relationships. And really, we'll also get into why more and more men are walking away from them and not looking back because of the struggle that relationships often are. We want to try and solve some of that for you. So I'm really excited to have on as my guest today someone who you've heard me talk about him so many times. You know he's a hero to me, and dare I say, he's a legend in the field of gender and relationship dynamics. He is Dr. Warren Farrell, who is a world renowned author, a speaker, a true thought leader who's shaped my life, and I would be fairly safe in saying shapes conversations in the lives of many men, women, and families for decades now. Sorry. And he recently released a brand new book. It's called From Roommate to Soulmate: The Seven Secrets to Lifelong Love. I was really worried about saying that and not screwing it up. And he's going to join me to discuss the book and talk a little bit about how men can find true, meaningful, long lasting relationships. So, Dr. Farrell, it's an absolute honor to have you joining me again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to talking with you. You're just such a warm and articulate person.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I'm a little verklempt on that. So, before we dive into the subject matter, I do want to make sure I give you the opportunity to kind of let the listeners know who you are. I think most of them probably do, and if they don't, why the heck don't they? But can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the work that you've done over decades now?
My career started back in the late 1960s, and it gives you a little hint about something. And and I was on the board of directors of the National Organization for Women in New York City when the feminist movement was first starting. And then I began to start seeing that there were also issues with boys and men, and started to articulate those. And so the feminist movement, in which I was sort of like very much respected in the feminist movement, they began to criticize me because I was acknowledging the issues of boys and men, and they felt boys and men had all the power, and they had toxic masculinity, and they had privilege, and they were part of the patriarchy, and they were really upset that I was articulating the fact that when boys are growing up, one of the single biggest predictors of whether they're successful or not is whether they have an involved father. And so as I began to sort of recognize the importance of those issues, I began to evolve into losing my feminist fan base, if you will.
Yeah.
And but also so many men and boys were saying that what I was saying was really changing their lives and helping them not commit suicide, and in one case, not do a mass murder, a mass shooting. And so it was really, so I've been staying with that. But during the past 30 years, I've also been doing a couples communication workshop, having started, doing work, having men listen to women and women listen to men. I got both sexes to listen to each other. And for 30 years, I've been trying to figure out an answer to the way that why is it that no one feels heard? Why, especially when when they criticize, or the other person perceives them as criticizing, they almost always experience a defensive reaction rather than a receptive reaction. And I tried to figure out why that was, and was there a way around it? And every major therapist like Gottman had been unable to get people to be able to handle personal criticism without becoming defensive in their real life. Everybody suggested it in the workshop, agreed in the workshop, but no one was able to execute it at home. And so I worked on trying to solve that problem, and that led to my Role Mate to Soulmate workshop, and then my Role Mate to Soulmate book.
Yeah, what I find interesting is, I've read all of your books going back 50 years. And it's kind of a little bit different than most of your prior books, right? I go
Mhm.
back to the day, well, the Boy Crisis was the last one before this one. I go back to, I'm going to get the title wrong, but Women Don't Hear What Men Don't Say.
Mhm.
Was I close enough on that? All of those
Oh,
things.
yes, women can't hear what
I
men
got it
don't
right,
say.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
you got very
what
close.
I find interesting is it my opinion, and I want to get yours, is it's all led you down this path to write this book, right? And you kind of were just touching on that, and I wanted to just kind of ask you, what made you write it now? Like, what was the real impetus? Because as you said, you've been doing your various programs for 3 decades now. What was the impetus to do it now?
I don't write anything unless I feel I have something, that there's a problem in society that no one has solved, and I feel that I have a solution to it. And it took, and one of the most difficult problems to solve was the getting people to be able to handle personal criticism, not only without becoming defensive, but I've been able to develop a method where, as the criticism is happening, they can link that criticism as it's happening to an opportunity to be more deeply loved. And it was once that I could do that, once I could thought I was doing that, I also had to check out that I was in fact being able to do that, meaning that I had free follow-up group phone calls after every workshop that I did. And people told me what worked and what didn't work. And one of the ways that people handle personal criticism without becoming defensive is to alter their natural biologically defensive self, and into with a series of mindsets. And so for example, before I have everyone do what I call a caring and sharing time, or a caring and sharing practice, and they set aside 2 hours a week to actually to handle one concern or criticism that their partner has. But because when this happens spontaneously during the week, normally, the person about to give the concern or criticism is usually walking on eggshells, and then the person receiving it is often responding defensively, which convinces the person that they should never have brought it up to begin with, and that and the relationship distances. So what I realized was that before people hear a criticism, they have to alter their natural biological state. If And our natural biological state is to be defensive, because historically, if we heard criticism, it was from a potential enemy.
Mhm.
And so therefore, if it was from a potential enemy, it made sense for us to get up our defenses, or to even kill the enemy before the enemy killed us. And that was functional for survival. The problem is it's just dysfunctional for love. But throughout all of history, what we were focused on was survival until recently. And now we've upped the ante, and we really want something more than just a partner that fulfills certain roles. She raises children, he raises money. She risks her life in childbirth, he risks his life in war. We want more than that. And so I wanted to develop something that would fulfill that in reality, because in practice, no one was really doing that, even though everybody agreed they should do that. When they got home and the criticism appeared, that wisdom disappeared. And so I'll give an example of a mindset. So before somebody hears their partner's criticism, the first of 6 mindsets that I've tested over the last 30 years that work the best is something that I call the love guarantee. And so the love guarantee is the person says out loud, so their partner about to do the criticism can absorb the fact that they're doing this for themselves. They say out loud, the love guarantee. And I feel that if I provide a safe environment for your feelings, no matter what those feelings are, whether I completely agree or disagree with them, whether I absolutely know that, quote, know that's the true story or not, I will provide a safe environment for you to say whatever you want in whatever way you want to say that. And when I do that, you'll feel more secure with me, therefore more loved by me, and therefore more love for me. So let's say the woman is about to do the criticism. And the guy is doing this mindset, saying this out loud. The woman is feeling like, wow, okay, it's safer now for me to say this. And I can see that he's he's rehearsing this and he's absorbing this.
Mhm.
And then they do a number of other five other mindsets before they say, yes, I'm ready to hear your concern. And when that process is finished, they it's virtually a 100% guarantee that both sexes will feel really heard, and they know that what's bothering them and eating at them, they have a time during the week to share that and be completely guaranteed that they'll be heard in that way. And that's just a little portion of this, what I call the seven practices for creating a deeper love. So your original question is, why so long? And the reason is this was the toughest nut I've had to crack. And and I really needed to feel that I'd been able to do that before I felt comfortable publishing the Role Mate to Soulmate book.
Well, it is the toughest nut for you to crack, or anyone for that matter. I mean, it's
Yes, yes.
these days it's the $1 billion question. We're past $1 million question. It really is, because there are so many struggles with relationships. We're seeing the breakdown of relationships on both sides. It's I often talk about men walking away, but women are walking away as well. And you kind of touched on something that I think is the main impetus behind that, which is we don't talk to each other in ways that respect each other, I guess is the way I'll put it. And, again, I'm skewed. My audience is mostly male, so I hear from them far more than I do women. But one of the things they'll often bring up to me is they don't feel safe opening themselves up emotionally to their partner, or really women in general, because it either has, or they think will backfire on them or come back to haunt them. You've heard it yourself. They're either going to be dismissed, it's going to be weaponized, it's going to lead to conflict, the whole gamut. And I'll acknowledge that it's a very real, legitimate concern. Absolutely, it is. But it's also one, I think it's fair to say, and you kind of touch on this a lot in the book, that can be overcome, at least within the interpersonal relationship. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you, having read the book and pulled a wealth of information for myself and my relationship with my wife out of it, because I struggle with this a little bit. Not much. I know I can open up to her, but there's times I hold back when I probably shouldn't. What are some of the things that we as men can learn, either from the book or in general, on how to address the concern itself, the fear, if you will, and avoid that pitfall of opening up within the relationship or not, which, in my opinion, dooms more relationships than anything else. I would genuinely curious to see what you think about that.
Yeah, no one in a relationship feels that they can share a criticism with their partner, whether it's male to female, female to male, two men with each other in gay relationships, two women with each other in gay relationships. Most parents don't feel they can do that with their children, especially once they become adolescents. Most adolescents don't feel they can do that with their parents. This is a universal problem. And it's because historically, as I said, you felt criticism. It was your enemy. It was a threat to your survival. And we still have that genetic transference of that type of attitude. And the problem is that it's just, terrible for love. And that's why it really creates I make it really clear in my role mate to soulmate workshops in the book that this is not going to be, just read role mate to soulmate and you completely, you'll be better forever. In fact, I persuaded the publisher to have a link to an online video course for practically free in the book, because I found that most of the time people really need to not just read the book, but they really need to practice this, and the online video course gives them, puts them through each of the practices together. So I'll give you another example of something that I ask couples to do. After they've done this caring and sharing time, which with the six mindsets, and I'll share another mindset with you in a moment so you get a sense of it. That's 2 hours a week. And of course, it starts with not just the concern or the criticism, it starts with two appreciations that you give your partner at 5 levels of specificity. So if you're saying to your partner, and then it ends with two appreciations at 5 levels of specificity. And so one of the things that I teach people to do is to make sure that your appreciation of your partner is frequent, is disciplined. That is, you maybe have couples set aside every Wednesday or one night a week where over dinner they just sort of share three appreciations with each other. It only takes about 15 minutes, but the discipline of doing it, say on a Wednesday, really builds it in that you're looking forward to being appreciated by your partner. And then I also have partners set aside the remaining 166 hours a week. The caring and sharing is 2 hours. So that leaves 166 hours a week to know how to develop a conflict-free zone that doesn't mean that criticisms won't come up, but it means that you have the skill set to take any criticism that comes up and transfer the response to it to the caring and sharing time when you'll really be heard, or when your partner hears you, criticizes you. Instead of responding and arguing with it and becoming defensive, you save the response that you will do to that caring and sharing time when your partner will first prepare herself or himself to hear that criticism. So let's see. Tell me whether you'd like me to expand on the conflict-free zone, the appreciations, or another mindset first.
Warren, I would say all of the above, but again, there's so much information that we could really go through, but any of those would be great. But one in particular that I wanted to touch on, if you don't mind, because again, it goes back to what I think is the most important concept I got out of it personally, having read the book, was the concept of caring behind the criticism. Like you've talked about criticizing and all that. A lot of relationships, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the criticism comes from, it could come from fear, as we've kind of touched on. It's biological. Some of it is just mean spirited, to be honest, right? But a lot of it, I think, comes out of love, but it's not spoken in a way that feels loving, if that makes sense, right? And as I was reading your book and digesting, because what I would do is read a few chapters, go dump my hot tub, and just digest it, right? Well, actually, I was listening to it, but one of the things that really struck with me was that whole concept of the caring behind the criticism and how it can affect a relationship, both good and bad. And I want to kind of touch on that, if you don't mind, and explain what it is, first of all, and you've kind of already started doing that, and how it can affect a relationship, both good or bad, and what you can do to start implementing it.
Yeah, I mean, almost all concerns that we have about our partner is an idea that we feel that if we share it, it'll make the relationship better, and therefore it is a reflection of caring. But here's how challenging that is. Suppose most people who hear a criticism, their partner says, that's not a criticism, just making a suggestion. So suppose they were saying, oh gee, when would you mind putting the dishes in the dishwasher rather than in the sink? It's kind of a mess up here when I come up and it's sort of the end of the day and I'd like to have some peacefulness. That would be really helpful to me. So the partner, the person saying that is really hoping to make things better. And it's just from their perspective, it's just a suggestion. But from the perspective of the person hearing it, they're being criticized because they left the dishes in the sink rather than the dishwasher. So the natural response might be, you left the dishes in the sink a few days ago, and I didn't say a thing. I didn't come after you about it. And then boom, boom, they're off in a in a race of,
World War
like,
III erupts.
yeah,
Yeah.
World War III, exactly. And it's the most important world war they can have because it's the war with the person they love, not with somebody they hate. And that's a really challenging world war, so to speak. So one of the things to understand about criticisms is that the giver of the criticism almost never experiences herself or himself as giving a criticism, but making a suggestion for the improvement of the relationship. But there's so many things. So somebody might say, could you leave the toilet seat down rather than up like you did last night? And so from the perspective of the person hearing that, that's a criticism. So one thing you can do with that is adjust the way you say that. So instead of saying, could you leave the toilet, please don't leave the toilet seat up, you can say, I love the aesthetics of the toilet seat being down. would you mind having the toilet seat down for me? So now you're sharing your feeling, and most husbands and wives want to do something that is compatible with somebody's feelings, but you're just saying something, I love the aesthetics. So who's going to argue with you that you don't love the aesthetics? And so this shares a personal preference that's an aesthetic preference, not that it's right or that it's wrong. You could say something like, I like the toilet seat, the toilet paper pulled from the top, not the bottom. And somebody can be, and the other, you have a partner that pulls it from the bottom. And so you may look up in the Google, how's a toilet seat, how is a toilet paper supposed to be pulled? And you will find that it was originally um, uh, created with a patent that had it be pulled from the top. And so you could go to your partner and say, see, I'm right, it should be pulled from the top. And where have you gotten? Have you won or have
You
you lost?
lost. The minute you do that, you've lost.
Yeah, you lost, yes,
And
right.
but you're speaking about, like, in the scheme of life. I was chuckling while you were talking about those because I've had these same discussions, right? And it's funny. We all have, I think, in some respect, but it speaks to where we're at, right? It's a fundamental issue, I think, of communication and how we communicate. And it's funny because, like, as I was reading the book and thinking about it, and my wife struggles with criticism in general because of her past, right? And I am fully aware of that. And
Everybody's past.
yeah,
We're all humans.
yeah, that's a fair point. And I try and be sensitive to that. And sometimes I do hold back, but I didn't know I was doing this, but I was kind of doing what you were saying, which is I find a different way of saying it. And it relates and hits me because I think that's one of the reasons we're as strong as we are, is that I am sensitive to her criticism or her resistance to it, and try and change the way I do certain things. Now, I'm probably one of the weirdos. I mean, yes, I react to criticism, but I just don't care that much. I mean, if you're online, I spend my life getting criticized, so there's not a day that goes by I don't deal with it, and I don't care anymore.
Wait, interrupt there.
Yeah.
A big difference between being criticized, by people that we don't really know
Hmm.
versus criticized by the people we love. The more we love someone, the more vulnerable we feel. And
Fair point.
when a woman criticizes a man and a man criticizes a woman, there's two different experiences that end up equaling out, but they're for different reasons. And so when a woman criticizes a man, there's on some level of feeling on the part of the man that, gee, she doesn't respect me.
Mm.
And almost every man understands intuitively that if the woman does not respect me, she can't love me.
It
That's really challenging.
it's the number one thing men will cite: respect, respect, respect.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's
And
the
that
driver.
and that's not inaccurate because it is true that a woman can't love a man she doesn't respect. Let's put the shoe on the other foot, though. Suppose the man is criticizing the woman. One of the reasons that women have chosen men historically and biologically is to be a protector and a provider. So think of protector for a moment. If a man is criticizing a woman, does the woman feel protected? Or does she feel put down by the very person who's supposed to protect her?
She might even start thinking it's get fear out of it potentially.
She potentially could. And yet, even though there's a male-female difference there, as I mentioned before, gay couples, the same basic problem. They feel criticized by their partner, and parents and children feel criticized by the people we love. If we love somebody, we're vulnerable, we feel criticized. And so that's the problem that I'm solving in Role Mate to Soulmate, is how to get around that and create a temporary ability to be able to hear our partner's concerns without becoming defensive. I'll share with you, if I may.
Please.
Um, you probably remember the second mindset that I shared in the Role Mate to Soulmate book for the caring and sharing session practice. And that second mindset was uh, I create the basis for that by having the couple sit back to back and fill out on a piece of paper something that their partner will never see. And the question that I ask is, imagine that your partner was about to be killed, either let's say being drowned or in a car accident. And you knew with 100% certainty that you could save your partner's life. But that in the process, you'd have a 50% chance of risking your own life. This all happens for you to you in a
Blink,
tenth of a second,
blink of an eye.
blink of an eye,
Yep.
exactly. And and so would you take the risk, a 50% risk of losing your own life if you had a 100% chance of saving your partner's life? Yes, no, uncertain. I then have everybody in my workshop wrinkle up the piece of paper that they've written on, which is identical to the way the other person's piece of paper looks, and have all the men throw it in one corner, the women throw it in the other corner. Then I have all the men go around and say whether the answer of another man, not themselves, was yes or no or uncertain. And about 90% of the men say yes, they would take a 50% chance of risking their own life for a 100% opportunity to save their partner's life. About 80% of the women say they would do that, even though they know their husband will never, their partner will never see that piece of paper.
Mhm.
And so a different person is reading the answer. And the only caveat there is that I say that pretend children weren't involved in the equation. So do you care partner to be willing to risk your own life at a 50% level to save your partner's life at the 100% level? And so then the second mindset is before they hear their partner's criticism, well, if I'm willing to die for you, I guess I could listen to you.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I remember when I was reading through all of that, I was chuckling, right? And I actually shared with you another one you talked about, if we can touch on it quickly, because you got me. You got me. So it's very early in the book. I want to say chapter 2, maybe. Hey fans, I just wanted to take a quick break from the show to remind you just how much we here at Men Need to Be Heard truly appreciate and value your support. And we'd like to ask you to do us a little favor. It won't cost you a dime, and it'll only take a few seconds out of your day. Could you take a moment to give us that like, give us that thumbs up on the video, and even share it with your friends? Doing so will help us to spread the word and continue to raise awareness on the issues that men and boys face in today's modern world. And we'd love to hear what you have to say on today's topic. So don't forget to comment down below and let us know how we're doing. Your input and feedback means the world to us, and it helps us to continue bringing great guests and even more content each and every week. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. It's the best way to stay up to date with all of our latest discussions, interviews, and deep dives into the issues men and boys face. It also helps the channel to grow so that we can continue to raise even more awareness on the issues. So hit that subscribe button and become part of the Men Need to Be Heard community. All right, that's it for now. Back to the show. It was so telling to me, and you got me. And it was one of those moments, Dr. Farrell, that I just sat, because I was working out in the gym when I was listening to that. And I had to sit down on the bench for a second and go, that was one of those holy crap moments in my life. And it's one I think I'll remember down the road because it was so true, right? And I'll just gonna there now I've laid the groundwork. I'll let you take it from there.
so one of the things I share in the Role Mate to Soulmate is a sort of a hypothetical. And the hypothetical is pretend your partner came up to you and said, from now on, I'm not paying any rent or sharing any part of the mortgage at the house. And I'm not cooking any meals for us. And I'm not cleaning up after us. And um, I'm not even going to sort of have sex with you. But I will be open to doing that with other people. I'll expect you to just clean up after me from this point in time. And so I'm not going to do any grocery shopping. I'm not going to take you anywhere in the car, but I'll expect you to take me places in the car. I'll expect you to pay for the car, uh, pay for everything else. I have no inheritance to give you, no money to give you. I'm not planning to have any inheritance or money to give you. In fact, if I had any money, I wouldn't give it to you anyway. And so how would you, and then I go on with about a dozen other conditions like this, the same type of tenor. And so and then I ask everybody in my workshop to raise their hand and say, raise your hand if this would be an acceptable arrangement for you. And everybody just sort of laughed. And then I say, and suppose this, I say that 77 million people in the United States have this arrangement. I'm sorry, 77, there are 77 arrangements like this in the United States.
Mhm.
And they're the arrangement that your dog has with you.
Yeah.
And the, so I ask people in the workshop, well, why, what's so special about your dog that you will do all these things for your dog with no expectation of anything in return? And the people in the workshop say, well, the dog comes up to me and looks at me like I'm everything and waits for me to come home and just really is so appreciative of me. And I guess, I'm willing to pay that price for being appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, what you're
And
talking about is unconditional love. That's, dog.
that's no, no, no.
Oh, good. Fix me.
I'm talking about completely conditional love.
Oh, okay. Go
The,
ahead.
the dog has all of those
Oh, I see what you
conditions,
mean. Okay.
okay? And yet it feels to us just by being loved like that, that all the conditions that that dog requires have disappeared and felt to us like unconditional love.
Yes, that's what I meant to say. But you are way more articulate at it than I am because,
Well, I did spend 30 years working on something that you do.
but
And so
it's. Go
one
ahead.
other dimension of that. There's something else that the dog doesn't give you that no one recognizes. The dog doesn't give you criticism. And for the lack of criticism and for the gift of being appreciated and looked at like you're God, which is really just being looked at like the opportunity for food, but
Yeah, really. Ultimately, it is.
you
Yeah.
know, like, is so powerful for us that we're willing to give our dog all these things that we would never give our wife or husband. And so that really, just puts it a bit, I think, in perspective.
Oh, it absolutely puts it in perspective. And as I said, it was one of those he got me moments, and I sat down and I remember reading that a few weeks ago, and I'm still thinking about it because it says it all to me, right? It's that we're willing to accept those conditions in one way, but we're not even willing to accept any conditions often in our interpersonal relationships with our significant other. And ultimately, having read that and thought about it all the way through, I think that's why so many relationships either struggle or fail. Is that we either lose sight of it or we never had a grasp of it ourselves. Because I would
Mhm.
say, in my case, maybe I didn't really understand it till I heard that analogy,
Mhm.
and so it helped give me some clarification, some understanding about the whole dynamic of it and how you can then use that. This is what's so powerful about the book in general is you're giving people tools that they can then, if they put the effort in, because it's not going to just happen, you can then take forward into, and I would argue not just spousal relationships or living together or whatever, but even into the corporate world and things like that, because we're all human beings. We all think and feel differently, but we do.
Mhm.
And you're building on concepts that we can then use to help our lives better and at the same time make their lives better as well.
Absolutely. One of the final section of this book is called From Civil War to Civil Dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And what it teaches us is how to take these things we're doing with our partner and bring them into the workplace and bring them into other members of our family that we completely disagree with. So say, for example, well, remember Tim Walz when he ran for vice president under Kamala Harris, his brother, Jeff Walz, he hadn't spoken to him for 8 years. They hadn't spoken with each other for 8 years. And when asked why, it was because Jeff Walz despised the progressive politics of Tim Walz, and Tim Walz despised the conservatism of Jeff Walz. And so, and as a result of that, neither of them talked with each other for 8 years. So in my workshops, I have people with different political perspectives learn how to take the ability that they've learned to handle their partner's criticism in different perspectives and learn how to translate that to somebody in their family that they love and would love to have a more loving relationship with, but they've come to sort of not love or avoid or tiptoe around because they have totally different political views. And that section is called From Civil War to Civil Dialogue. And it's really, and then once you learn to do that with somebody in your family, you can also do that in the workplace. If you have somebody in the workplace who's an ardent Democrat or an ardent Republican, Trump supporter or a strong DEI oriented person, you can really search for the virtue that has taken from your perspective the virtue train into Viceland, and but find that original virtue that motivated them. Recognize what the two of you have in common. Two people who in a family, for example, who both one is an adamant Trump supporter, the other one is an adamant supporter of Bernie Sanders, let's say, and they're about as far apart as possible. But what do they have in common? They have in common they both care.
Mhm.
And what is democracy really built on? It's the ability, it's caring about how we about politics, being involved. And as opposed to when I grew up before Kennedy was president, almost everybody, the biggest problem that the country articulated was the problem of apathy. Nobody really cared about politics or the government. And then when Kennedy became president, they started to begin to take the government into issue and care about it one way or the other.
Mhm.
And so democracy is really based on a lack of apathy, participation, involvement. And so rather than feel like a person that disagrees with you is ruining democracy, you can understand that the person disagreeing with you, that the real solution is to learn how to hear each other in ways that don't focus on the things you disagree with, but can see the virtue that created their perspective.
If only we could give your workshop to everybody in Congress, right? I mean, it would probably change things drastically. Um,
The chaplain, the former chaplain of the Senate, is talking with me about doing that for people in
really?
Congress.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
please make it happen. And if there's anything I can do to facilitate it, I'd be more than happy to. Dr. Fowler, I want to kind of go back to something I was thinking about earlier, if we could, which is really it goes back to the title of the book. So, one of the things that I think is so true, and you highlight it throughout the book, is how we as couples kind of fall into subconsciously our roles, right? So,
Mhm.
role mates to soulmates, or we actually go from, I think, soulmates to role mates first, and then we have to
Yeah,
change it
yeah,
back.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's something that I know my wife and I have struggled with from time to time. It could be work pressures or whatever. It just kind of, if I'm being honest, snuck up on us at time to time.
Mhm.
And we, I guess, we're aware of it enough that when we see it happening, we'll do something like, all right, we're going to go take a weekend vacation or something so we can reconnect type thing. But I think a lot of people struggle to even do what we're doing, and I'm not saying we're great at it, but what are some of the warning signs that people can kind of be aware of that they're slipping from soulmates into role mates,
Mhm.
and how they can start saying, all right, we've got to take a step back and do something about it.
Yes, a lot of warning signs. One is complacency. Another one is that at the very beginning, So the sequence of relationships is you fall in love and you have this physical attraction. My wife and I, we met 31 years ago, and I opened up the door, saw her, and boom, I felt this like chemical attraction. And she said she did the same with me. I don't know that she's telling me the truth, but she certainly acted like she was. And and so then you feel like soulmates. But of course, you really aren't soulmates. You don't know anything about each other.
Right, right.
What you have is your chemistry mates. That's what you are. And then as you get to know each, and then at the beginning, when you're feeling all this energy, you don't mind a criticism or two, because it's it's compensated for by this enormous amount of chemistry, and you've just made love, and you want to be open, and you want to both be open and pretend you're open, and so and then after a while, that chemistry sort of doesn't isn't the primary motivator, and you're not making love every day. You're making love, less and less and less, and it's less passionate, and you're now beginning to move in together, and one of you moves into the other one's home, and the other one feels like each of you have your own differences as to how unfair that is, and the way the other person's treating you, and you become complacent, and you sort of and maybe you're you're not being so careful in the way you um, eat sloppily, or even burp or something else along those lines, or you're wearing older clothing and so on, and then you're going out for to a party, and you and your partner are showing each other clothes, and says, is this clothing nice for the party, and what do these people like it to wear? What would be appropriate here? And you're putting on your makeup, and you're doing your hair, and getting all ready for or shaving, and getting all ready for the party. And yet, so what is the message that communicates? You're with your partner every day. You have on sloppy clothing. You don't care. It seems like you don't care. But the moment you're meeting some strangers, or sort of half friends, half strangers, or friends, the friends outside of this person that you love, you're dressing up for and treating yourself specially. And so that needs to be a discussion. There's positive values to complacency. One of the positive values is you can be yourself. But one of the negative values is that you feel that that you're just preparing to be you're one of your better selves, or your best looking self, or your when you go out to visit somebody else, not your partner. And so that's one of the things that doesn't have a perfect answer, but it's a discussion that every couple should have, and very few couples do have. The other one is not just criticizing directly, but complaining. Let's say I'm going out to, I suggest a restaurant. I actually had a couple over here that it was their 20th anniversary. I was working with them as clients, and the fellow had researched a place in town to go to, that for that evening, to celebrate their 20th anniversary. And so the following day they came back, and I could feel some tension between the two of them. And he said, I did all this research to find this restaurant, and the first thing my wife says is, oh, the soup is kind of bland, and that guy who served us was a little bit distant, and he was interpreting every complaint that she had about the restaurant as a complaint about him, because he had recommended the restaurant.
Hmm. Yep.
And the same kind of thing, you recommend a movie, and your partner doesn't like the movie, and the person's complaining theoretically about the movie, but it was also about your recommendation, so you feel criticized. So whether it's a concern that your partner feels she or he has, that's a suggestion for improvement, your partner defines that as a complaint, as a criticism, or whether it's a complaint about the restaurant or the movie, your partner experiences that as criticism. And your partner also experiences that as controlling, because think about it for a moment. If you feel criticized by your partner, doesn't a part of you feel controlled? If you feel complaints happen about all the recommendations you make, you feel a little controlled.
Hmm.
And so
Absolutely, you would. Absolutely.
yes, most people don't see themselves as controlling, but when they think about it in that light, they can see how their partner might experience that as being controlling. And so these are the types of things that that there's solutions to all of these things that I talk about in Enrollmate to Soulmate, but there's solutions that have to be practiced. And that's why I'm probably the only author that will ever say, don't just read the book, because it really needs to be combined with the online virtual course that I provided access to in the book, because which actually puts you through 10 hours of practicing these experiences with your partner.
You know, and to play off of that a little bit, because that's the thing that people need to understand is this is a tool, but much like a hammer, it's not going to do anything if you don't pick it up and use it, right? And that's a key thing. And one of the things that I want to express to my audience, and I want you to chime in on it, is how important this can be for you. Because if you're struggling in your relationship, and again, I hear from guys all the time, I'm struggling. They might relay stories similar to the ones you have. I did this for her, and she
Mhm.
didn't appreciate it. I mean, you hear that one constantly. But it affects us personally, and if you can get things rolling again, for lack of a better term, pun intended, roll mate rolling, and get that dynamic into soulmate, right? It can change. As a man, it can change our experience of family, of our relationship, potentially fatherhood. There's a whole list of things I could come up with, and I think, as I was reading the book and I'm going, okay, this is me. This is not. Some cases it was not me, but that type of thing. The takeaway I'm getting from it all is, all right, this is ways that if I start incorporating some of this, my life will be better. And I'm sure it's the same for women, by the way. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I'm sure that was part of your main motivation. You've kind of articulated you're helping people to basically have happier, healthier relationships.
Absolutely. There's no way that you can help a heterosexual relationship without helping both people at the same time. Unless both people are happy, then no one's happy. And even more importantly, unless the wife is happy, no one's happy.
Yeah.
Because men are really more dependent upon women's happiness than women are on men's. Because the women, when they're unhappy, they go out and they talk to their women friends. They have an outlet, and all the women friends agree with them that they share stories of their husbands and how terrible they are, and they all support each other. And so that's an outlet that women have that men tend not to have. We go out and drink or try to do something for the community where we get appreciated, as opposed to doing it for our wife, where it will give us more direct appreciation. The other dimension of that that's very important is in male-female relationships when you're parenting. As you said that you had read the Boy Crisis book, and you
Oh.
probably remember the portions of that that talk about the different dad style parenting and mom style parenting.
Hmm.
And you were talking about the importance of appreciation. It's almost impossible for most women to appreciate dad style parenting because without really knowing what its purposes are. So, for example, a dad will do roughhousing, and with the kids, and from the mom's point of view, that means that she has only one more child to monitor. Whereas from the dad's point of view, it feels like the right thing to do because the kids are loving it and they feel engaged. But most dads have no idea as to what the really positive values of roughhousing is in the way that dads tend to do it. So, for example, roughhousing tends to be something that actually the research shows that roughhousing actually increases children's ability to be empathetic. It increases their ability to have postponed gratification. And postponed gratification is the single biggest predictor of success or failure in life. And so all of these, the same type of thing with teasing. Dads will often tease, and the children may cry, and no dad that I know is able to explain the positive aspects of teasing. Of course, teasing can go too far and become cruel, but a certain amount of the depriving the child of a certain amount of teasing is also a different type of cruelty. It's just that no dad that I've known is able to say that, and women can't hear what men don't say. So those types of things. And so if you're reading the Boy Crisis book, focus especially on the chapter about the differences between dad style parenting and mom style parenting, because it really will help you appreciate each other and know how to do what I call checks and balance parenting, which is giving for the children the best of dad style parenting and the best of mom style parenting.
Yeah, it's why I argue dads can only teach what they know, moms can only teach what they know, and children benefit most when you get both. So it's
Yes,
something
yeah.
I talk about all the time.
And it's
Um,
so important for dads to be able to know the value of what they're doing. I mean, I never heard a dad say to mom, "I want a roughhouse so the children will have a greater amount of empathy." That's and that's and so you have to do the research to know what it is that you as a dad do, probably intuitively, and what's the benefit to the children of having that? Because if you're not able to express that or even know that, you can't expect a mother to appreciate something like roughhousing or teasing, which just seems more like cruelty than it does like building a better child.
yeah, it comes down to the perception of the meaning behind it is really. Dr. Farrell, I want to kind of go into what I know some of my audience is going to be thinking as they're listening to us and it's in their brain right now, which is, I hear what you're saying, I get it, but it's too late to fix my relationship because it's something I hear all the time. It's too late. What would you say to someone? Let's say me, I don't think that way, but let's say I'm sitting there going, nope, it's too late. What would you say to me about that and how, by through the use of the book and reading it and implementing the ideas behind it, you can change that?
Now, suppose your son or daughter came up to you and said, "Mom, Dad, I really don't want to sort of listen to anything you're saying anymore because it's just too late to fix myself. I really, I'm just sort of not able to do it." As a mom or dad, you would know that that's just plain not true. On a sort of more direct level, I do give everybody in my workshops a survey at the end of the workshop and ask them whether their relationship feels the same to them as it did before or is better or worse. And we get 100% response that it's better, or significantly better. And then the next question becomes, how does it feel like 2 months after the workshop? And that's why I do the free follow-up group phone calls, is to find out how is it 2 months after the workshop. And sometimes some people do slip backwards, but it's very rare that anyone that has been doing the caring and sharing practice or is paying any attention to what happened in that workshop, all the people that are following through with the exercises are in fact having better relationships. There is slippage in the area, people just getting involved in the rest of their life and not paying attention to the discipline. The becoming a soulmate is not just about reading a book. It's an art and it's a discipline. And the biologically natural thing to do is to become complacent and to become defensive. And so everything I teach in the Role Mate to Soulmate book, everything is biologically unnatural. Therefore, it takes practice to rewire your brain to make it natural to be able to associate criticism from your partner with an opportunity to be more deeply loved.
And I can an analogy I'll use to relate to that is fitness, right? As you know, in my other life, I'm a fitness strength and conditioning coach. I train people that compete, and one of the things I often tell them is the hard part is not getting to where you want to be; it's staying there.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's more work to keep going, and because there's times it's tough, let's be honest,
Mhm.
but if you can persevere through that, you can accomplish anything. And that's probably the best way I can articulate it, because it is the key, right, is to make sure that you don't become complacent and say, all right, well, we had this great success, we're good. No, you're never good. Same thing with, say, weight loss. You might get to a certain number, but you aren't going to stay there if you go right back to your bad habits. You have to keep maintaining your good ones. um,
Those are great analogies, and that's exactly right. There's no one that would ever say that, I've gone to reading Role Mate to Soulmate is like, maybe going to the gym 3 or 4 times. But if you say, all right, I've gone to the gym 3 or 4 times, I've got it made, well, you will deteriorate.
Yeah, or I'm going to eat great 5 days a week, but on the weekends I'm going to go
Yeah,
nuts. It's never going to work. The other
yeah, watch
question,
that. That's what I do.
the other question I know some of the audience is probably thinking is that again, I hear what you're saying, blah blah blah. And I want to fix it. I want to do something about it. I want to, start implementing this. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to start implementing it. But I'll use she, but it could be either way. But she will never buy into it. She won't do anything. She doesn't think there's a problem or anything like that. How do you address that situation?
Well, first of all, if you think there's a problem in the relationship, the chances are about 99% that your wife does too, or your woman friend does too. So, and usually it's women that drag men to some type of relationship workshop or get them to read a self-help book and so on. And a woman who hears that the man wants to ask her to come to the type of workshop like that, usually 90 some odd percent of the time, the woman just plain has a response. And this is the response: wow, you care. And she increases her respect for you, and she increases her feeling of being cared for just because she sees that you care about the relationship and really want to make it better. So it's almost always a way to win a woman's heart. In fact, I usually start my couples communication. I open up the workshop, and just to relax the men, I say that, that I'm doing two workshops here at Esalen this weekend. And one of them is, and so this one that you're in, is the group sex workshop for born again Christians. And, especially the guys just, laugh, and they realize, okay, this workshop is not going to be just about, sort of everything strict and that type of thing. And so that's a joke for them in a way, and it relaxes them and makes them realize they're in an environment where we can be playful. And in fact, one of the things that I talk about in terms of relationships is that couples that play together stay together. That's what the research shows. And so how to play together is another part of roommate to soulmate.
Yeah, I mean that's I couldn't agree with you more on that one too. We're running short on time, so I just want a couple more things I want to really address. If there's one takeaway that you would want, I'm going to use men because this we're primarily
Mhm.
dealing with men here. If there's one takeaway that you would want every man either listening today, but more importantly, reading the book and implementing, um, I'll call it behaviors within it.
Mhm.
What would it be?
To when you get the book, to get the online virtual course, and to suggest to your wife or your woman friend that you would like to help develop a more intimate, loving relationship, and that you'd like to set aside a weekend to just do the experiences in that course together. It's about 10 hours total. And to see if it makes your relationship better, and that you would like to not only make your relationship better, but you'd like to be good role models for your children and how you communicate if you have children. And so, and you're also become good, your parents look at you and they see that you have a problem, and that you know how to solve it and work it through and be able to hear each other. They start respecting you more for that. Your friends start coming to you and saying, I noticed that the way you handle each other or work with each other is amazing, and become curious. And so it's a win-win situation on so many levels, and most women do pay, as I said, more attention to the relationships. Remember, historically speaking, the way women survived was by finding a man, by finding a good relationship. And so they had, from their perspective, reading a relationship book was reading a business book, because a relationship historically was women's business. Men reading a business book was their relationship book, because when they read a business book, they were successful, they made that, and that attracted the women. And so that's sort of the leftover from our history.
And I will say there are a few guarantees in life, but I can guarantee you, that if you read this book, you will get something out of it. Absolutely. And I don't say that often. And I'm not saying that because Dr. Fowler's in front of me. There were instances in that book, and I've shared the one that blew me away, and I had to sit down for a moment and kind of think about it, And it's, even if it ultimately, worst case scenario, doesn't ultimately solve a problem within your relationship, it may help you with the next one. That's the other thing, guys, you can take away from it is, if it leads to you soul searching, if I may, as men. And that's what's so key about it. And you're not directing it at men, you're directing it at both parties. But the
Mhm.
way that as I was, because I was listening to it, as I was listening to it, it struck me at how deep it is without being deep, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because
Mm.
you were giving me tools again. Now it's on me to pick that tool up and use it, and that's the key that I would want the listeners to take is, you need, one, you got to go buy the tool, so go get the damn book.
Mhm.
But two, then you've got to either, as a couple, and if she won't for whatever reason, and I agree with Dr. Farrell, she's going to want to, unless she's completely checked out. You can
Mhm.
still build off yourself and build yourself up by reading the book and implementing what's in it. We got to wrap things up. I do want to ask you, Dr. Farrell, how can people get the book?
Just they have a one third off on Amazon right now, so that's the least expensive way to get it. Of course, support your local bookstore if you can afford that. And then again, in the Roll Mate to Cellmate book, there's a QR code for a practically free online virtual course. That's the real thing, that when people go do that with their partner, that's what really makes the big changes. The rest changes the attitude, the basic attitude, but fulfilling it is constant practice of it, and the online course helps with the practice of that. So that's what I'd recommend mostly. If you're in a relationship where that's already broken, you were just talking about maybe your wife is checked out, or maybe you're in a custody battle. Read the book with an eye toward how you can appreciate in a custody battle what the mother is going through. Usually it's the mother that is critical of the father, and that the father is having a much harder time in the custody battle. And so, but take away from the book how to be the initiator of leaving your former wife feeling heard enough so that it's hard for her to make you into the enemy.
What
That will be helpful.
what a terrific thing! And that hadn't even crossed my mind. What a terrific thing! Yeah, that alone, right? Um,
Yes. Save you millions of dollars, not
yeah,
millions,
well, potentially
hundreds of
hundreds of
thousands,
thousands. I mean,
hundreds of thousands
in
of
some
dollars.
cases, it could be a million.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. Any final thought that you would like to share with the audience?
Um, just that I really appreciate you and the way you've both read the book. Many times people do podcasts and they just skim the book. I can tell you've really taken it in and applied it, and that allows me to share the best of it. And so I just really want to end with appreciating you're a wonderful. I can see a wonderful human being and a great interviewer. Thank you very
Oh well,
much.
thank you. I mean, again, it touched me, and I can say, and I have said the same about your prior books, but this one's different, right?
Mm,
Going back 20 years, what you've done books on the wage gap and all those. They touched me in certain ways, but this one,
mhm,
if I may, probably touched me the most in the sense that it was me, if that makes
mhm.
sense, right? And
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
so relatable to me, and why I think it's so important that people get the book, read it, and start implementing what's in it, because it not can change your life. It will. It will. It's changed mine. For the better, and I'm just getting started with it, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to get my wife to read it. She's not a book reader, so I said, no worries, honey. I got it downloaded on Audible too. So she'll be able to listen to it like I did when we're working out. Because I know, and I've already shared a lot of the concepts in it with her, and she was very positive for it, to reinforce what you were saying earlier. And I know that it already has made our relationship better, and we have a very
Mhm.
strong one, but it'll only make it better down the road. So a very sincere thank you to you for writing the book, first of all, and then coming on the show and sharing all that wealth of information that you did.
It's really been a pleasure, Dan. I loved it, and I I hope it, especially if you do the online video course with your wife, please let me know how that goes, because that's what really seems to have the greatest impact.
Will do. All right, folks, what a terrific conversation. And I can't thank Dr. Farrell enough for taking the time to join me today and being so willing to share his thoughts and wisdom with all of us. As someone who's in a happy, healthy relationship and who truly appreciates the gift that I've been giving in that regard, I know all too well the true benefits a stable relationship can bring, both to me as a man, but as a human being. And these days, let's be honest, it's hard, right? Dare I say, impossible for many of us to find and maintain a good relationship. And it's a fair point, but it's also why I cannot recommend this book enough. It will, whether you're single, married, divorced, somewhere in between, the book's going to give you tools, real tools, and an honest perspective on them that can help you to find that more meaningful, deeper connection that so many of us are missing. And it's something that, let's be honest, we all need. I know I do. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button. Really helps me to spread the word and grows the channel and lets us address the issues that men and boys face and get some meaningful solutions to them. And if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I release new videos every single day, and I'd love to have you become part of the Men Need to Be Heard tribe. All right, until next time, this is Dan. Thank you. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, you matter.